Good day, and welcome to xsTECH, Tricks and Tips. I want to go through a couple of things here, but before I get into the recipe book, for this training, one of the things that we have to create is an exit ticket. Well, this is what the final product will look like. However, this will be the block that we actually start with. So we're going to start setting this up. However, before we get there, one of the things I think students should do is get a piece of graph paper. And from that piece of graph paper, fold it into quadrants. And this will help us start to understand quadrants of positive, positive, negative, 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 positive, and positive, negative. Now, this is kind of that visual representation that hopefully gets us a better understanding. Then eventually we're going to throw in this in terms of X, Y, Z. But what we really want to focus on is, can we do most of our work here? However, there will be some negative movements as we go through, depending on where our work coordinate offset, WCO, is originally set. So we're going to do everything at 0, 0 here, and then this will be our working field on the milling machine table. So let's go ahead and get started here. Now, as I set up my recipe book, one of the first things I want students to be able to do is go ahead and take their page, and I want them to go ahead and create their y-axis and their x-axis. And I'm just going to go ahead and position this over in the lower left-hand section of the paper so that I can write any kind of notes and titles up here, and then any of my recipes over here on the side. And I'll explain why the drawing will be crucial in terms of setting up all of our x, y start and end points. But this will be huge in terms of being able to get kids started. The reason I say that is we will eventually lay this block out, and that will give us a representation of the work and how the machine will actually think through what we program it to do. All right, so for the exit ticket, in order to not distract class, I'm going to do everything in metric. That way, when you come back, you can look at the settings. You'll see how I have things drawn out, and it is to actually mimic, if you will, exactly the block of wood that we're going to cut. A couple of notes that I want to talk about is when we set this up, we're going to set up a buffer zone on each side. I even mark it knowing that I'm going to have clamps. And I'm going to have this at about 3/4 of an inch based off of the imperial, otherwise known as, say, 19.5, 20 millimeters off to the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that off with my dotted line. And this will just keep us safe before we start doing any of our work. The first thing I want to do, just in case the wood's not perfect, is once I have it clamped in, I'm going to do a facing pattern. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark this. So let's go ahead and actually take out our measurements. I'm going to just draw the lines down because, in a sense, I have this centered. And I want to be able to, one, face the top and then do a profile outside edge so that I start adding depth to this. And I can then face it off of the backside, and then I will be able to separate it from my piece of wood. So let's go ahead and talk about the facing. So again, this is our end product that we're wanting to work with. This is our starting block. And then these are all of the measurements that I have through here. And let me explain a couple of things. So we want to start cutting right away from that clamp edge. So we have a 19 mil or a 20 mil clearance away from that edge of 0, 0. So again, our starting point, we're going to be looking right here, and then everything's referenced off of here. So if I come up here and I look, my X start, I'm just going to go ahead and put 20 millimeters. My X end, I'm just going to give a 1 millimeter cushion, so 160. My start up here will be 88, but I'm just going to go a little bit over for an 89. My Y0 obviously will be my end. And then I'm going to start at a Z -1 end. So I want to take off a millimeter in depth. Again, I'm going to start at 0 and then go a depth of cut of 1. So I'm just going to clear off this whole area just to make sure that my wood surface, because you can see in here, I do have some chips and so forth. So I want an actual cleaned top machined surface before I start working on my cuts. So let's go ahead and set that up.